Namo Namaha and welcome back. Now, when we last left off, we'd seen how Tirumalai Krishnamacharya had founded a very famous and successful lineage of modern postural yoga in the South Indian city of Mysore in the 1930s. Now let's look at how this lineage then proliferated, expanded into a number of distinct branches that then spread out, again, like a flowering vine, maybe, all around the Indian subcontinent and eventually all across the world, so that most popular postural yoga classes that you can go to nowadays are in one way or another influenced by that Mysore lineage. The distinct branches within the Krishnamacharya lineage emerged out of a handful, really, of his early disciples who then repackaged his training methods in different ways. Krishnamacharya's own original school, the Krishnamacharya Yoga Mandiram, which is located in Mysore, has been kept alive by his son T.K.V. Deshikachar after his passing in 1989. It's now being continued on by his grandson, Kaustubh Desikachar, and it continues to remain quite influential in the world of yoga. Another prominent branch came from Indra Devi, who was a Latvian-born student of Krishnamacharya in the 1930s. She later moved to Hollywood and taught yoga to Greta Garbo, Marilyn Monroe, and many other celebrities in LA. But perhaps his most successful disciple has been B.K.S. Iyengar, he hailed from a Brahmin background in Karnataka, kind of similar to Krishnamacharya. He established a school in 1937 in the city of Pune in Maharashtra, and he began to expand and modify Krishnamacharya's methods. For one, he introduced many more new forms of physical postures, asanas, and placed less emphasis maybe on pranayama or breath control. He was also more interested in clinical or therapeutic applications of yoga for people who had back problems and things like that. He also placed less emphasis on Hindu philosophy, religion, spirituality, though they're still very much there in Iyengar yoga. The result was a kind of global branding of what you can call Iyengar yoga, where there's a whole 13-level system of international certification, from like introductory 1 to senior advanced 2, where you have to complete courses, pass exams, and move to the next level, that kind of thing. His book is called Light of Yoga. It was published in 1966, and this was also instrumental in kind of popularizing and marketing the Iyengar method around the world. Recently, he's passed away, of course, but his school in Pune is still thriving. The Iyengar method has a massive following around the world. A second major branch within the Krishnamacharya lineage was founded by K. Pattabi Joyce, also a Brahmin from Karnataka in South India who studied with Krishnamacharya in Mysore in the 1930s. In 1948, Pattabi Joyce established a school in that same city of Mysore called the Ashtanga Yoga Research Institute, which has become a massive international success. Though he passed on in 2009, his grandson Sharad Joyce has been continuing the tradition along with a number of his other disciples. Like Iyengar, the Pattabi Joyce method, which is called Ashtanga Vinyasa, builds on Krishnamacharya's original Vinyasa Krama method, but then expands certain aspects of his teachings. Pattabi Joyce focused on adding increasing amounts of complexity and rigor, maybe to Krishnamacharya's original sequences, which were called vinyasas. Like Iyengar, he added more emphasis on the therapeutic effects on the physical body of the various postures, the asanas, along with other physical aspects of yoga, the bandhas, the muscle locks, drishti, the gaze, the breath control, pranayama. This makes Ashtanga Vinyasa maybe a bit more physically demanding than the other styles within this lineage. Also, there's a greater emphasis on group work, all being led by the teacher who's counting each linking posture, each vinyasa, and making verbal and physical adjustments to the practitioners as they're performing the asanas. This kind of live, intensive engagement between the teacher and student within this Ashtanga Vinyasa tradition is connected maybe to a hallmark feature of Pattabi Joyce's school. This is this close embrace of the idea of lineage or parampara, the transmission of authoritative knowledge through a close, almost devotional relationship between guru and disciple. This idea of parampara is both important but also kind of controversial. On the positive side, it ensures a sense of authority and authenticity within the tradition. When students learn Ashtanga methods, they're asked to make a serious commitment to being part of the lineage of the parampara as they transition themselves from students to teachers, right, to becoming teachers, so that the methods and disciplines of Pattabi Jois can be transmitted with fidelity. The tradition in this way kind of maintains a centralized scope of authority and power, since the singular figure of that guru is always the one who authorizes if someone is allowed to teach in the tradition. This is in contrast, say, to the Iyengar brand, where teachers are authorized by passing tests that are being given by governing boards, associations, that sort of thing. Also, because the guru is a living, breathing human vessel of that tradition of knowledge that's being preserved, it gives a kind of distinct feeling of timelessness, ancientness to that tradition. It feels 5,000 years old. And it also allows for a certain flexibility, interestingly, in terms of innovation or adaptation of the tradition. So when, for example, Pattabi Jois adapted or modified Krishnamacharya's methods, he would do so on the grounds of two kinds of authority. First, he would show that in the textual sources, there are sources that in Sanskrit that support the teachings. Since he was the guru, he could frame them as not being new teachings, but actually a rediscovery of authentic traditions that were already there that we just didn't know. It's kind of like digging deeper into a bag and pulling out some older mementos, maybe. On the flip side, there are more troubling concerns about the guru-disciple relationship through which yoga knowledge is often transmitted, not just in the Krishnamacharya lineage, I should say, but in other yoga lineages as well. Since the relationship is one of devotion, trust, and loyalty, it also leaves the students to be vulnerable in some ways to the potential abuses of that power. If the guru happens to misbehave and take advantage of the student's devotion, trust, and loyalty, for example. So there have been a number of recent allegations, for example, of sexual harassment and abuse involving Krishnamacharya's grandson, Kaustubh Desikachar, or Pattabi Jois himself, and prominent gurus from other schools like Yogi Bhajan or Amrit Desai. There's also been numerous financial scandals, cases of physical or emotional mistreatment, and the list goes kind of on and on. It's kind of the troubling side, maybe, to the otherwise fascinating system of embodied education that's involved in this guru-disciple parampara. It's worth talking a lot more about as we think through what it means for yoga traditions to be passed down through lineage-based systems. There's a second issue worth reflecting on as we bring this video to a close, which is that of religiosity. Is yoga a religious activity? Is it secular? Is it a Hindu-only religious activity? Or can, say, a Muslim do yoga and still be Muslim? Can each lineage, each school has their own approach to this question. For Krishnamacharya, the founder of this prominent set of lineages, yoga could not be extracted from that religious framework. This was likely due to his own commitments to the Sri Vaishnava sect of Hinduism, as our authors tell us. The idea of Sri Vaishnavism is that liberation, ultimate peace and happiness, can only happen if you surrender yourself to God, to Vishnu Narayana, who will embrace you and pull you out because of his love. Krishnamacharya was steeped in this Sri Vaishnava tradition. In fact, he traced his own ancestry to a key medieval Sri Vaishnava saint named Nathamuni, who's credited with reforming and reinventing the Sri Vaishnava religious community. Krishnamacharya saw Nathamuni as his family guru, his kula guru, and saw God in the form of Vishnu or Narayana being the site of ultimate authority, inspiration, devotion, and power in his yoga practice. So though his school was not itself an overtly Sri Vaishnava theological school, and he was universalist in his outlook, Krishnamacharya still wasn't secular in such, and he encouraged his disciples to contemplate on Narayana and to maintain a spiritual dedication to Narayana, but with a distinct kind of modern twist, which is that it was up to you to figure out for yourself who Narayana was, whether it's Vishnu or Shiva or Allah or Yahweh or Jesus, maybe goddesses, right? This kind of devotionalism, though, this bhakti, was still a key part of the Krishnamacharya lineage. As Singleton and Fraser state for Krishnamacharya, faith in God is absolutely necessary for any healing. So with this picture of these various branches within the Krishnamacharya lineage of yoga, we can kind of bring this session to a close. Maybe the biggest set of takeaway points for discussion is what's the role of the guru and the role of religiosity in the lives of disciples, right? In the lives of yoga students as they enter into and engage with yoga practice in these kinds of lineages. Can that traditional mode of guru shishya parampara be made to function without abuses of power? Or is it something we have to deal with? Can people who are not Hindu, who are not religious, maybe practice without buying into the religious commitments of their lineage? And also without disrespecting or misrepresenting those commitments? Those are the kind of questions maybe we can grapple with during our discussions. So see you next time when we'll turn to another question in our journey through the growth and development of modern yoga. How has modern yoga changed as it spread around the world? Thanks for watching, and